I'm Sadie Miller, a 30-year-old freelance graphic designer living in the vibrant, rain-soaked city of Seattle. My fiancé, Ethan Carter, 31, is a software engineer with a knack for coding and a heart that's been my anchor for 6 incredible years. When he proposed last March, it was a moment straight out of a dream. We were curled up on our cozy living room couch, the Puget Sound glimmering through our apartment window, when he pulled out a ring and asked me to be his forever. It wasn't flashy, just us, a bottle of wine, and the quiet certainty that we were building a life together. That moment felt like every piece of my life had finally clicked into place, and I couldn't wait to plan our wedding. We envisioned a small, intimate ceremony in January with about 70 guests at a stunning lakeside restaurant nestled in the Pacific Northwest's lush greenery. Fairy lights, soft music, and our closest friends and family, it was going to be perfect. Or so I thought. That bubble of joy burst almost immediately, thanks to my mother, Diane, a retired bank manager with a penchant for meddling, and my half-sister, Lily Harper, a 24-year-old fashion retail worker who's never been shy about her insecurities. Two of them turned what should have been the happiest time of my life into a psychological battlefield, laced with drama that I never saw coming. I've always known my family dynamic was complicated, but this was next-level chaos. A bit of backstory. My mom married Lily's dad, Tom, a real estate agent with a booming laugh and a questionable work ethic, when I was 5. Lily came along shortly after, and while we grew up under the same roof, we were never close. She was more like a roommate I tolerated than a sister I confided in. From a young age, Lily had this competitive streak that bordered on obsessive. If I aced a school project, she'd throw a tantrum. If our grandparents praised my art, she'd demand attention for something trivial like a new hairstyle. It was exhausting, but I brushed it off as kid stuff. As we grew older, though, her rivalry only intensified. I worked hard, earned a scholarship to art school, and built a steady freelance career designing logos and branding for local startups. Lily, on the other hand, bounced between dead-end jobs and messier relationships, always chasing some fleeting spotlight. When Ethan proposed, I naively assumed my family would share my excitement. I called Mom the next day, expecting her to gush about wedding plans or ask about the ring. Instead, her first words were, "Oh, Sadie, Lily's not going to like this." I laughed, thinking it was a bad joke, but her tone was dead serious. Apparently, my engagement was going to hurt Lily because she was single and still figuring things out. I was floored. This was my moment, my milestone, and somehow it was already about Lily's feelings. I tried to shrug it off, but that comment planted a seed of dread. I had no idea it was just the beginning of a storm that would threaten to derail everything Ethan and I had dreamed of. What I didn't expect was how quickly things would escalate. A few weeks later, Lily announced she was getting married to a guy she'd been dating for just 3 months. His name was Jake, a bartender with a charming smile and a questionable reputation. I kept my doubts to myself, but something felt off. Was she rushing into this to one-up me? I couldn't shake the feeling that my happiness had sparked some kind of twisted competition, and Mom was already taking her side. Little did I know, this was only the opening act of a drama that would test my patience, my resolve, and my ability to hold on to my own joy. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Growing up with Lily was like navigating a minefield. When I was 5, my mom, Diane, remarried Tom, a slick-talking real estate agent with a penchant for flashy suits and an ego to match. They had Lily soon after, and from the start, our relationship was more like wary roommates than sisters. We shared a house in a quiet Seattle suburb, but never a bond. Lily always saw me as a rival, a shadow she needed to outshine. If I brought home an A on a school project, she'd throw a fit, tearing up her own half-finished homework in a rage. If our grandparents complimented my sketches at family dinners, she'd interrupt with some exaggerated story about a dress she'd seen at the mall, desperate to steal the spotlight. As kids, I chalked it up to sibling rivalry, but as we grew older, her competitive streak turned vicious. By the time we hit our 20s, the gap between us widened. I worked tirelessly, earning a scholarship to a prestigious art school and building a freelance graphic design career that let me work with quirky startups across Seattle. I loved the creative freedom, pouring my heart into logos and branding that told stories. Lily, on the other hand, flitted between jobs, mostly retail gigs at high-end boutiques where she'd charm customers but never stick around long enough to climb the ladder. Her personal life was even messier. She jumped from one toxic relationship to another, each breakup more dramatic than the last. I tried to be supportive, offering advice or a shoulder to cry on, but she'd brush me off, her eyes glinting with resentment I couldn't quite place. When Ethan proposed, I was over the moon. I pictured my family sharing in that joy, Mom gushing over wedding plans, maybe even Tom cracking a corny joke about walking me down the aisle. I couldn't have been more wrong. The day after Ethan's proposal, I called Mom, my voice bubbling with excitement as I described the ring and our plans for a January wedding. But her response hit like a bucket of ice water. "Lily's not going to like this, Sadie," she said, her tone heavy with warning. I laughed, thinking it was some weird joke, but the silence on the other end told me she was serious. "What do you mean?" I asked, my stomach twisting. "Lily's single, still figuring things out," Mom said. "Hearing about your engagement is going to hurt her. It's insensitive." I was dumbfounded. My engagement, the happiest moment of my life, was somehow a problem because of Lily's feelings? I brushed it off, telling myself Mom was just being overly cautious, but that conversation left a bitter taste in my mouth. A few weeks later, the plot thickened. Lily announced she was getting married to Jake, a bartender she'd been dating for barely 3 months. I met him once at a family barbecue, and he gave off bad vibes. Too smooth, too quick with a wink, and way too comfortable flirting with everyone, including my cousin Megan. The whole thing screamed impulsiveness, even for Lily. I kept my mouth shut, figuring it wasn't my place to judge, but deep down I wondered if my engagement had lit a fuse. Was she rushing to the altar to one-up me, to prove she could beat me to something? I pushed the thought aside, hoping I was wrong. I wasn't. Just 2 months after her whirlwind wedding, Lily's marriage imploded. Jake cheated on her with a coworker from the bar, a betrayal so public it was the talk of our extended family. Lily filed for divorce, and I genuinely felt for her. Heartbreak is brutal, and despite our strained relationship, I didn't want her to suffer. I reached out, offering to grab coffee or just listen, but she shut me down with curt texts and cold glares at family gatherings. It wasn't just grief, she was angry at me. It took a while to piece it together, but whispers from Megan, my cousin, and unofficial family gossip confirmed my suspicions. Lily blamed me for her rash decision to marry Jake. She saw my engagement as a challenge, a taunt that pushed her to keep up by rushing into a doomed marriage. Apparently, she told relatives that my perfect life was a constant reminder of her failures, and my upcoming wedding was like salt in her wounds. The realization hit hard. I'd spent years tiptoeing around Lily's insecurities, trying to keep the peace, but this was different. She wasn't just jealous, she was rewriting reality to make me the villain in her story. Mom, of course, was no help. Instead of calling out Lily's misplaced resentment, she doubled down, acting as if I owed Lily my happiness to make up for her pain. Every time I mentioned wedding plans, whether it was picking out wildflower centerpieces or booking a local band, Mom would go quiet or change the subject, her disapproval palpable. It was clear she'd chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. As the months passed, the tension grew thicker, like a storm cloud hanging over every family interaction. I started dreading calls from Mom, knowing they'd end in some veiled guilt trip about Lily's fragile state. Little did I know, this was just the prelude to a full-blown campaign to derail my wedding, one that would push me to my breaking point and force me to make choices I never imagined I'd have to face. By November, the wedding planning was in full swing, and I was buzzing with excitement as Ethan and I finalized details for our January ceremony. The lakeside restaurant we'd chosen was booked, the wildflower centerpieces were ordered, and we'd even hired a local indie band to set the mood. Sending out the invitations felt like a milestone. Our love story was finally taking shape on paper, ready to be shared with the people we cherished. But that joy was short-lived. 2 days after the invitations went out, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her calls were rare, usually reserved for quick updates or passive-aggressive texts, so I braced myself. I should have known better than to expect a normal conversation. She started casually, asking about my day, but her tone shifted fast. "Sadie, are you really going through with this wedding?" she asked, her voice dripping with judgment. I frowned, confused. "Of course, Mom. The venue's paid for, the menu's set, everything's ready." Then came the sigh, a long, theatrical exhale that screamed trouble. "I've been thinking about Lily," she said. "It's not a good time for a big wedding. She's still heartbroken from her divorce. Throwing a huge celebration right now feels insensitive." I froze, my grip tightening on the phone. Insensitive? My wedding, planned for nearly a year, was suddenly a problem because of Lily's feelings? "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "this is my day with Ethan. We've paid deposits, invited guests. You can't seriously be asking me to cancel it." But she was. "You could do something small," she pressed, "maybe just a quiet courthouse ceremony. That way, you're not flaunting it in Lily's face." Flaunting it? I was livid. "This isn't about Lily," I snapped. "It's about Ethan and me celebrating our love. Why should we shrink our happiness for her?" Mom's voice turned sharp. "Sadie, I thought I raised you to be more compassionate. Lily's been through so much. You're being selfish." That hit like a slap. Selfish? For wanting to marry the man I'd loved for 6 years? She even threw in, "I thought I raised you better than this," a classic guilt trip that cut deep. I ended the call, shaking, and immediately spilled everything to Ethan. He was as stunned as I was. "Who asks their daughter to cancel her wedding because of someone else's divorce?" he said, pulling me into a hug. His support grounded me, but the sting of Mom's words lingered. Lily, of course, wasn't sitting idly by. She started texting me, her messages dripping with sarcasm. "Must be nice to have everything in your life go perfectly, huh, Sadie?" one read. Another hinted that I'd chosen January to rub my happiness in her face. I ignored her at first, hoping she'd burn out, but she escalated. My cousin Megan, a law student and my unofficial family spy, called to warn me that Lily was spreading rumors. Apparently, she'd been phoning relatives, claiming I was deliberately flaunting my wedding to humiliate her, even saying I'd picked the date knowing it would hurt her post-divorce. The logic was absurd. My engagement predated her marriage and its collapse. How could I have predicted her life imploding? But Lily was spinning a narrative, and some family members were buying it. Megan overheard her telling our uncle that I'd always thought I was better than her, painting me as some heartless villain. Mom didn't help. She kept calling, each conversation a variation of this same guilt trip. "Lily's so fragile, Sadie. A big wedding will crush her." She even had the audacity to call Ethan, trying to appeal to his thoughtful nature to convince him to scale things back for Lily's sake. Ethan shut her down firmly. "Sadie and I have planned this for a year," he told her. "It's our day, and we're not postponing it for anyone." I was proud of him, but the pressure was wearing me down. I started dreading family interactions, knowing they'd revolve around Lily's supposed victimhood. The breaking point came at Aunt Karen's Christmas party. Karen, a sweet elementary school teacher, hosted her annual gathering at her cozy craftsman home, decked out with twinkling lights and a towering tree. I thought it'd be a chance to escape the wedding stress, but Lily and Mom were there, and the tension was palpable from the moment we arrived. Lily barely acknowledged me, her eyes darting away whenever I spoke. I tried to focus on chatting with Karen about our floral arrangements, but Lily interrupted with a loud huff. "Must be nice to blow money on a party while some of us are barely holding it together," she muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. I bit my tongue, but the air grew thick. Then, in the middle of the living room, Lily erupted into sobs, a performance worthy of an Oscar. "It's so hard," she wailed, clutching her face. "I've been through hell and Sadie's just throwing her perfect wedding in my face like my pain doesn't matter." The room froze. Karen looked mortified, and Mom swooped in, rubbing Lily's back. "She's right, Sadie," Mom said, her voice icy. "You need to be more sensitive. You don't know what she's been through." That was it. I'd had enough. "This wedding has nothing to do with Lily," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "Ethan and I have been planning this for a year. If she's hurting, that's on her for rushing into a bad marriage, not me." Lily's tears turned to fury. "How dare you?" she screamed. "You've never struggled a day in your life. You've had everything handed to you." I was trembling with rage. "Maybe if you spent less time playing the victim and more time making better choices, you wouldn't be in this mess," I shot back. The room went silent. Mom stared at me like I'd betrayed her. Ethan grabbed my hand. "We're leaving," he said. I didn't argue. As we walked out, I felt a mix of relief and guilt, but I knew I'd done the right thing. This wasn't just about a wedding anymore, it was about standing up for myself. Christmas Party Showdown was a wake-up call. As Ethan and I drove home through Seattle's misty streets, the weight of Mom and Lily's behavior settled over me like a fog. I'd spent years navigating their drama, always trying to keep the peace, but this was different. They weren't just being unreasonable, they were actively trying to sabotage my happiness. The realization hit hard. Their guilt trips, accusations, and rumors weren't about concern for Lily's feelings. It was about control, about dragging me down to soothe their insecurities. I wasn't going to let them ruin the most important day of my life. Sitting on our couch that night, wrapped in Ethan's arms, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. Mom and Lily would not be invited to our wedding. The next morning, I poured my heart into an email. I kept it calm but firm, laying out the truth. "Your actions over the past few months, pressuring me to cancel my wedding, spreading rumors, and trying to control my day, have caused me immense stress," I wrote. "For my own peace of mind, I've decided you won't be attending. This is about Ethan and me celebrating our love, and I need to protect that." I reread it a dozen times, my finger hovering over the send button. Felt like severing a piece of my past, but I knew it was necessary. When I finally hit send, a wave of relief washed over me, though I braced for the fallout. It didn't take long. Within hours, Mom's response landed in my inbox, a melodramatic manifesto that could have been scripted for a soap opera. "Sadie, I never thought my own daughter would be so cold-hearted," she wrote. "You've chosen a man over your own blood and betrayed our family. Your father would be ashamed." That last line stung. She knew how close I'd been to Dad before he passed when I was a teenager. But it was classic Mom wielding guilt like a weapon. Lily's reply was even more unhinged. "You're just jealous of me," she wrote, "and you're punishing me for being honest about my pain. You'll regret destroying our family." Jealous? Of what? Her string of bad decisions. Her accusations were so absurd I almost laughed, but the hurt ran deep. They were turning my wedding into their personal vendetta. The backlash wasn't limited to them. Over the next few days, my phone buzzed with messages from relatives they'd roped into their narrative. My uncle, a gruff mechanic swayed by Mom's sob stories, called to lecture me about family unity and called me immature for cutting them off. A distant cousin I barely knew left a voicemail saying, "I can't believe you'd do this to your own mother." It was overwhelming, like being pelted with accusations from every corner. But then the tide began to turn. People who truly mattered stepped up. Aunt Laura, a no-nonsense nurse who'd always been my rock, called to say, "Sadie, I'm proud of you for standing your ground. You've put up with their nonsense for too long." My cousin Megan, a sharp-witted law student who'd been feeding me updates on Lily's antics, sent a long text. "Don't let them guilt you. Everyone who knows the real story is on your side." Their support was like a lifeline, pulling me out of the chaos. But Lily wasn't done. Just days before the wedding, as Ethan and I were finalizing seating charts in our cozy apartment, his phone lit up with a text that made my blood run cold. It was from Lily. "Hey, Ethan," it read, "I'm really struggling right now. I know you probably think I'm awful, but I feel like you're the only one who gets me. Can we meet up?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. It wasn't just the audacity, it was the calculated manipulation. Lily had never been close to Ethan. They'd barely spoken beyond polite small talk at family events. This was a blatant attempt to stir trouble, to wedge herself between us right before our big day. Ethan's face mirrored my disgust. "This feels like a trap," he said, handing me his phone. "It is," I replied. She's desperate for attention. Over the next few days, her texts grew bolder. "I've been thinking about you a lot," one said. "I feel like we have a connection Sadie doesn't understand." It was so brazen I almost admired her nerve. Ethan blocked her number, but not before we saved screenshots of every message. I wasn't going to let her rewrite this story. I drafted another email, this time to Mom and a few close relatives, attaching the screenshots. "This is why Lily isn't invited," I wrote. "Her behavior is toxic and manipulative, and I can't have that at our wedding." Mom's response was predictable. She claimed I'd misunderstood Lily's intentions and was blowing things out of proportion. "She's just hurting," Mom wrote. "How could you accuse her of something so horrible?" I rolled my eyes so hard I thought I'd sprain something. But Laura and Megan were furious. "This is low even for Lily," Megan said over the phone, her voice sharp with indignation. Laura was equally blunt. "She's proven she doesn't respect you or your marriage. You did the right thing." Their outrage validated what I'd known all along. Lily's actions weren't about pain, they were about power. As the wedding drew closer, I felt a mix of resolve and anxiety. Cutting out Mom and Lily was one of the hardest choices I'd ever made, but it was also freeing. I was done letting their toxicity dictate my life. Ethan and I doubled down on our plans, determined to make our day a celebration of love, not a stage for their drama. But I couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't finished with me yet. The morning of my wedding dawned like a dream. The Seattle sky, usually cloaked in clouds, was clear and crisp, casting a golden glow over the lakeside restaurant we'd chosen. The venue was a vision, wildflower centerpieces bursting with color, fairy lights twinkling like stars, and the soft hum of our indie band warming up. I felt like a princess in my gown, my heart racing with anticipation. Ethan and I had planned a first look in the venue's garden, and when I saw him standing there, his suit sharp and his eyes brimming with love, every ounce of stress melted away. We laughed, cried, and held each other, whispering promises for the future. For that moment, the world was just us, and I thought I'd finally escaped the shadow of Mom and Lily's drama. I was wrong. Minutes before the ceremony, as I touched up my makeup in the bridal suite, Amanda, my best friend and maid of honor, a talented pastry chef with a knack for keeping me grounded, burst in, her face flushed. "Sadie, you're not going to believe this," she said, catching her breath. "Your Mom and Lily are at the gate, causing a scene." My stomach plummeted. "What? How?" I'd explicitly told security they weren't allowed in. Amanda explained. "They're trying to push past the guards. Your mom's sobbing, saying she just wants to see her daughter get married. Lily's screaming that you're a horrible person who doesn't deserve this day." I clenched my fists, fury bubbling up. They couldn't even let me have this one moment. Don't engage, I told Amanda firmly. Let security handle it. If I go out there, it's what they want. She nodded and rushed off to coordinate with the guards. I could hear faint shouts from the parking lot, Mom's theatrical wails and Lily's venomous accusations. Took everything in me not to storm out and confront them. But I took a deep breath, smoothed my dress, and reminded myself, this was my day. Security eventually escorted them away, but not before Lily's voice pierced the air, loud enough to echo through the venue. Sadie, you'll regret cutting out your own family. The words stung, but I pushed them down, determined not to let her ruin this. The ceremony was everything I dreamed of. Standing before our loved ones, Ethan and I exchanged vows, our voices trembling with emotion. Crowd, our true family, the ones who supported us, cheered as we kissed. The reception, Aunt Laura, her nurse's compassion shining through, pulled me aside. You stood your ground, Sadie, she said, her eyes fierce. They showed their true colors today, and everyone sees it. Cousins, friends, even Mom's old colleague approached me, whispering their support and rolling their eyes at the parking lot fiasco. The love in that room was overwhelming, a stark contrast to the chaos Mom and Lily tried to unleash. That night, back at our hotel, I glanced at my phone. Dozens of missed calls and texts from Mom lit up the screen, each one likely a new guilt trip. I didn't open them. I was done letting their toxicity invade my life. As I curled up next to Ethan, the weight of their drama finally lifted. This was our beginning, and no one, not Mom, not Lily, could take that away. A week after the wedding, as Ethan and I settled into our new life, my cousin Megan called, her voice buzzing with the latest family gossip. Sadie, you won't believe this, she said, barely containing her excitement. Your Mom and Lily had an epic blowout. Apparently, Lily, still seething that her plan to derail my wedding had failed, turned her venom on Mom. She blamed Mom for not stopping my ceremony, screaming that Mom had failed as a parent by letting me win. Mom, who'd coddled Lily through every tantrum, finally snapped. Megan said Mom kicked Lily out, telling her to grow up and take responsibility. Lily was now crashing with a friend, her life in disarray. I waited to feel pity, but after months of their manipulation, guilt trips, rumors, even Lily's attempt to flirt with Ethan, I felt nothing but vindication. Their toxicity had turned inward, and they were reaping the consequences. I blocked Mom and Lily's numbers, cutting them out of my life completely. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Ethan and I are now building our future in Seattle, surrounded by people who lift us up, friends like Amanda, family like Megan and Aunt Laura. This journey was a roller coaster of drama, but standing up for myself left me lighter, stronger, and more confident than ever. I learned 5 key lessons. First, set boundaries to protect your peace, no matter who's pushing back. Second, don't let others' insecurities dim your joy, own your happiness. Third, trust your instincts when someone's actions feel manipulative. Fourth, surround yourself with people who genuinely support you. They're your true family. Finally, standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, is the ultimate act of self-love. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world and helps me share more stories of resilience and growth. Let's inspire each other to stand strong and chase our happiness, no matter the obstacles.